Welcome back, listener. How are you? I'm glad you're doing well, and I'm glad you had a good week. My name is Aaron Richmond. You're listening to Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people where we talk about critical issues in the blindness community. Do you guys remember me talking to Matthias Alberton from a couple weeks ago? I certainly do. I really enjoyed that episode, by the way. That was really interesting. Well, you might have remembered that at some point in that episode from a couple weeks ago, we were saying that I should talk to a guy named Paul Clayton. He's a friend or an acquaintance of Matthias's. And well, he's right here on the other end of the microphone. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm very well, thank you.
There we go. The topic that I want to talk about today is travel. I've done a lot of it myself. I've studied abroad in England. I've been to France 3 times because my second language is French. Been to Amsterdam, Austria, Germany, Poland, Czech Republic, Swaziland, St. Lucia. I've been a lot of places. What about you? Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I started traveling in I guess, probably the early part of the early 90s. And I've travelled pretty much across parts of North America, South America. I've done Australia, New Zealand, Asia as being quite prominent in travels. I've scuba dived in Egypt. I've been on safari in South Africa. So I've always had the love for travel, or whether it be with a specialist organisation that people who organise holidays for visually impaired people, or travelling with a friend of mine who is himself partially sighted, and we've travelled quite a bit together on mainstream holidays.
And that's excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you traveled with this organization before, for visually impaired people, what is the name of that organization?
There were two actually. The organisation who started off the concept was they were originally called themselves the Guide Dogs Adventure Group, and they eventually changed their name to Guide Dog Holidays. So I did a number of holidays with them for several years. And the way it worked was you were partnered up with a sighted person, and that person was your guide for the day. And you basically, the groups were invariably 20 to 30, so fairly reasonably big groups, but you did get to know most people during the course of the holiday. Now that basically ended in '99 when Guide Dogs in the UK decided to go into the area of rehabilitation and move away from providing these additional services. It was taken over by Winged Fellowship Trust, and the organisation kept going, and the holidays remained in place for a number of years. One very memorable trip I did was travelling through Vietnam back in 2000 and was it? Oh, crikey. Got me thinking now. I think it was 2000. Yes, it was 2002.
I know, it's all a blur with everything that's been going on. It's all a blur. Yeah, I know.
Exactly. And then in 2004, I moved away from that because I was looking out for other options, and I had a break from traveling for a couple of years because I'm in full-time employment as well. And up until 2009, when I joined a trip with the company Travel Eyes, the founder of whom is totally blind himself. And I got to know him. We did a fabulous trip around South Africa. We were based in Cape Town, and we travelled around various places in Cape Town, visiting the wine regions one particular day, touring of the city. There's plenty of free time, but we certainly made the most of the 10 days we were out there. And again, very similar concept. The price for visually impaired people is a little bit more expensive because all of the sighted people on the trip are actually there as sighted guides. And since Cape Town, I've travelled with them on a number of, I've had quite a few trips with them to, I think I've done 13 in total. Some of the most recent ones including India and Bhutan, where we where we had the opportunity to climb up to the tiger's nest. which was no easy feat, trekking. But certainly brought back memories of the time when I trekked in the Himalayas. Sorry, not in the Himalayas. In 2009 when I was in Tanzania doing a charity walk up Kilimanjaro. I've also been to Japan. 2015 took us on a safari in South Africa, which it's amazing. That really was an attack of the senses. And we didn't just see the lions. We actually walked with lion cubs on one day. We visited the Victoria Falls. I had a day where I really pushed myself to the limit, where we did an adrenaline rush half day, which involved zip lining and throwing ourselves over the gorge and all sorts. So a great deal of fun. Absolutely loved it. And in 2016, we spent 17 days in the Galapagos Islands. So yeah, as you can probably tell, I've certainly travelled quite extensively.
I've done wonderful. I love Travelize. I've been on several trips with them too. Yeah. Every now, did you know that about me before you started this episode?
No, I didn't actually.
Well, I will tell you from the bottom of my heart, I just adored every trip from Travelize. This episode, as a matter of fact, I'm going to send Travelize this episode because this is going to be the best promotional episode from a podcaster they've ever had. And really, it's not like they're going anywhere right now, so it's not like they can. No. So I'm going to send them this episode because I will speak from the bottom of my heart. Travelize is the best organization for going on a trip, no matter if you're blind or sighted. It couldn't have been happier. My most exciting Travelize memory was a couple years ago. In April of 2018, I went on the Swaziland tour.
I heard about that. I was very close to booking that myself, but I didn't have the leave.
Oh, you could have met me. You could have met You could have met someone who didn't have a podcast then. That would have been cool to meet someone without a podcast. Well, now you know when you meet me. Now you know that I'm both a podcast and a real person. That's interesting. So that was a trip led, and she's such a wonderful person, so sweet, such a wonderful person. Catherine Dixon was the manager.
Oh, I know Catherine. Yeah.
You cannot find a better manager. Every experience with both her and have you been on any trips with Liz Wyke?
No, I haven't actually.
Yeah,
no.
another great manager. Both are incredible people. I enjoyed every moment of that trip. But I mean, there's different. The best part about Travelize is that it doesn't matter if it's a 14-day trip in Swaziland or 3 days in Amsterdam, which I've done that one too. Every trip is perfect. It's just a piece of artwork. It's perfect. It's perfectly written. You can tell this organization loves traveling and they love making everyone happy. Yeah. I really hope, from the bottom of my heart, I really hope that they get back into it. I mean, you're over there in London. You aren't too far from Leeds. What's the inside scoop? When are they going to start doing trips?
At the moment, they're looking to reach out to people. They're gathering anecdotes and stories that they can share to encourage people. I think this year the holidays, I think we have to be realistic and accept that there won't be any events taking place this year.
Indeed.
And it's the tragedy of the pandemic is it is very much having to live for the moment and monitor the situation very, very closely. But I would totally agree with you. And for any listeners thinking the holidays might look expensive, the number of
they're worth it.
Yeah, the number of opportunities I've come across where we've done a tour, but but they've gone the extra mile. The Peru trip was particularly a case in point where we spent a day touring around Lima, and we went to one of the museums. You could have spent all day in the museum. Very much a snapshot because we went to the cathedral. But what was striking me about the museum is they actually laid on a specific exhibition for us. They brought out artifacts that normally wouldn't be seen by members of the public, and they've been very, very carefully selected because of their because of the tactile nature of the items, and it was just lovely working with them, and it was the same. It was the same when I was out in Bhutan as well. The tour leader had never worked with blind people before, and by the end of it, it was just, you know, I actually said to him at the end of the holiday, at the end of the particular segment before we flew back to Calcutta, I said, if ever Travel Eyes do this trip again, please, you have got to be the tour guide for the Bhutan's leg of the trip, because he was absolutely fantastic.
I had looked at that one. Yeah, I mean, really, the best part about Travel Eyes is I know that no matter what the trip is, it's fantastic. But that one in particular, and for me, as an American, from the American perspective, yes, it's exhausting. Yes, you have to go all the way to Heathrow, but for me, it was worth every time I did it.
Yeah.
I said, I'm so glad I did it. And on.
When we did Japan, actually, there were people flying in from all over the world, joined us at the hotel at various places. We had one guy who I remember actually flew to Heathrow from Argentina and then on to Japan.
That's weird.
Because he just said he wanted to be with the group for as long as possible. But yeah, I mean, he was. It was exhausting for him because we didn't actually fly direct to Tokyo. We flew via. We flew Qatar Airways, so we actually ended up flying into Doha, and then on from Doha to Kyoto, I think it was, where the tour started. So, and a few days earlier, he'd flown halfway around the world from Argentina. Correct. By the time he got to Japan, he barely noticed that he was in Japan and barely knew what day or time it was at that point. Exactly.
At that point, your brain and body loses count at that point, right? Yeah. Well, I mean, and I've considered, it depends on where, so if you're a customer of Travel Eyes, it depends on where you're living around the world. You have to either find a way to get to Heathrow or Gatwick. Occasionally they've left from Gatwick. I've never done it. You have to basically get yourself to the UK, or you could meet them in progress.
Yeah.
My personal opinion, it's in the long term, probably just easier to meet them from where it starts. Probably, but it does depend on where. It depends on the content of the tour too. So, have you done any sailing trips with them?
I've not done any sailing trips with them, and I haven't done sailing for quite some time. I think other interests and pursuits and hobbies and that have come along, and I've not been able to. I've not actually kept up with the sailing.
Okay, because that is something that one of my dreams right now, well, apart from with my work and podcasting and everything I do, I sincerely hope, well, number one, I hope to get back into Travel Eyes, but in the meantime, I want to figure out a way for me to go on a sailing trip with people who love to sail. I've done a lot of sailing, in rivers and bays, but I'm into an adventure. I want more of an open ocean, a real thing. What advice do you have for that? Or where, basically, as we say in the business, so who's the next person I should talk to?
There is an organisation in the UK. In fact, it was this organisation that first got me interested in sailing. I was actually sponsored by the Rotary Club originally it was going to be 1988. It was with a company called the Jubilee Sailing Trust.
Excellent. And listener, you at home might have wondered. Rotary Club, I believe it is similar to Lions Club International, right? It's okay. Yeah, similar to the Lions Club, which I'm a member of a Lions Club here. Yeah. Lions Club, Rotary Club, wonderful organization. Sure. Mm-hmm. So they sponsored you, and then what happened?
They sponsored me it was initially going to be in 88, and the last paperwork that came through said you have to be over 16 or over. So it was like, okay. So they had to push it back by 12 months. And I spent a week traveling. We went from we sailed from Liverpool over to Southern Ireland and ended up down in South Wales. And and it was a full working. So it was pretty much it was no holiday, but it was a fantastic experience.